since it was my idea, I'll start. My name is Roz De Lizaraturi, and I am co-founder and president of REOCA, which stands for Renewable Energy Owners Coalition of America, which is a long way of saying we're a group of solar owners and renewable energy advocates looking to promote solar, and EVs and solar seem to go hand in hand, and we want to keep ourselves aware so we can let our members know what's going on. There you go. Devin,
I'm Manny De Lizaraturi, the other half of the co-founding team of REOCA, and I'm presently a director at large and webmaster.
Yeah, I'm Ken Dante. I'm a vice president of the board of REOCA.
And I'm Alex Leary, current treasurer of REOCA.
Joe Wanaka here, director on the board, also director of facilities for Pueblo Community College.
Hey, Joe, good to hear your voice.
You too.
I'm Heather Mayo. I'm a newer board member. I'm a at-large board member.
Betsy
Nice to meet
is
you.
joining us now.
okay. Thomas, you want to go ahead?
I thought I did, but I guess I was still on mute. I'm Thomas Blomster. I'm a board member.
Okay. And Devin, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Hey, everybody. Many of you may know me by name, if not reputation. I'm Devin Moeller, the Renewable Energy Manager at Black Hills Energy.
Great. And Mike, well, I guess how about let's let Ron go. We'll do the home team first. Ron?
Okay.
Yeah, my name is Ron Goaco, and I'm from the Pueblo County. I'm a guest here.
Great. Ron, can you give us like give me a one-liner of what your purview is?
Well, as far as the presentation happening here today, my interest is actually on the EV plan of Black Hills Energy, because we currently have an EV preparedness plan ongoing, and we have already completed the evaluation, and we will award the project soon to a consultant. And I was trying to figure out how the Pueblo County would probably work with Black Hills on strategically putting EV chargers or the EV readiness plan itself as a whole. Maybe there's something for REOCA, I don't know yet.
Okay, well, that's great, Ron. I'm really glad you're joining us. And I see another board member joined us. Betsy, are you able to communicate? Maybe not yet. Okay. How about Mike or Michael? How lovely that you have, it's easy to remember. One of you, go ahead.
Yeah, sure, I'll go. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, my name is Michael Harrington. I am the Senior Manager of Regulatory and Finance for Black Hills. And so I've been part of our team leading our electric vehicle strategy. So we're excited to kind of talk to you about that today. And then Mike Rubert is also on our team, and I'll let Mike, if you want to introduce yourself there.
So, Michael, before you,
Sure.
where are you located?
I'm in Denver. So I get the pleasure of working with PUC. So I manage a lot of our regulatory filings at the Public Utility Commission, and so I'm up here in Denver, and that's kind of where I'm based out of. Yep.
And then I'm Mike Grubert. I'm a senior regulatory analyst at Black Hills, also based out of Denver. Work on various rate filings, not just in Colorado, but throughout other territories of Black Hills. I'm also a new rooftop solar owner as of a couple weeks ago, so aligns well with your organization.
Great. Well, you can join, actually.
Maybe I will.
Great. Well, that's great. Was that it? Because I have something to say to you, Mike. I read or try to read testimony all the time of one sort or another, and yours was actually quite intelligible. I must say, I really, or maybe I'm learning more too. Probably part of it.
Yeah.
But really, it was really because, and I know your point was to be simple, to keep it simple.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
So,
definitely. Great. I'm glad to hear that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
Great.
And so I guess, did everyone introduce? Okay, so I'm thinking this, that I find that even when you have a burning question, when people start asking questions during a presentation, it really distracts and people get on tangents. And so if we can, I think the gentleman from Black Hills have a presentation that has, you know, a beginning and an end, and then we can ask questions at the end if that's okay with everyone. So
before we go on, Ross, just one question.
Sure.
You know, I sent the Black Hills folks a list of our questions. You received those, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So,
yep.
You know, I mean, if we don't have time to answer those here, we could always do that via email, by the way.
That's what I thought too. And I thought, you know, if you have a burning question, there's a chat at the bottom, write it in the chat and we'll address it at the end. Or if you're more paper pencil, write it at home, and at the end we'll do questions. Okay. So I'm glad we're moving along here. So whichever of you gentlemen why don't we mute ourselves while they're talking, and we'll come up for air at the end of their presentation.
Excellent. That sounds good. Well, I'm gonna start, and thought we would provide an overview of our electric vehicle filing and kind of what our general strategy for electric vehicles, and how we think about them, and then I'll turn it over to Mike to talk more about the specifics of the changes to the rate design, or a new rate structure that we're proposing. So I'm going to try to, I have a slideshow. Let me see if I can at least share my screen so I can try to stay on task.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, great. Let me see if I can get the slideshow button to work. All right. So before I dive in, I thought it'd be fun to just get our mindsets on electric vehicles. You know, as part of our team, when we were designing our program, we had a fun team building where at every one of our meetings, we start off at Black Hills with a safety topic first. And then the second thing is we would talk about electric vehicles, some fun, interesting fact about electric vehicles. And so I thought it'd be fun to start our talk on kind of some interesting facts here. Let me go to the next slide, if it'll work. Try it. Oops. I'm not sure which slide you guys are seeing, so if you're...
EV fun fact.
Okay. So what's interesting is that for all of the transportation sector right now, it's projected to be the largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions in Colorado this year in 2020. Typically, you think of you know, the utilities get picked on for our power plants and the like as being a major source of greenhouse gas emissions, and that certainly is true. But the electric vehicles, the transportation sector is also a significant contributor to the greenhouse gas emissions. And so naturally, with our current governor and our politics and the policy leaders in our state, there is a huge desire and a push to start electrifying our transportation sector. Currently, there are about 44 different electric vehicle models on the market, which I looked that up just last week and was surprised to see that many. And these are national statistics here that in 2020, about 2.7% of all vehicle sales were electric vehicles. So that was interesting. And then there's various projections out there on kind of where the electric vehicle sales are going. But one of them I found here said that in 10 years, projected to be about 28% of vehicle sales. And I pulled some facts on the number of registered electric vehicles in the state of Colorado, and I also pulled it for Pueblo County. If you haven't seen, the Colorado Energy Office has a really neat tool on their website that ties into the Department of Motor Vehicles vehicle registry. So you can play around with different queries and look at different counts and types. Anyway, so it's a really neat tool. If you haven't seen it, you should go out there and look at it. But here's some interesting facts. In 2015, the state of Colorado, we had 5,500 electric vehicles registered in the entire state. And now in 2020, so 5 years later, we have close to 30,000 electric vehicles in the state. Pueblo County, maybe this would be interesting because for you guys that see them as you drive around every day, I'm not sure, but in Pueblo County in 2015, there were 76 vehicles. And now it's showing, as of June of 2020, we're showing 183. So still quite a bit, there's not as many. I don't know if that's surprising to you guys, as if you see a lot of them on the roads or not. I know I certainly do up here in Denver. I see a lot of electric vehicles now. Pueblo Charger or public chargers. Again, I'm not sure how often how many of you guys are aware of. There's not that many actually out there. We've got a handful in Pueblo County currently. There's one right outside our service center in kind of the downtown area. And I believe the last count I had was about 9. And Devin probably has a more updated count. But I think the last count I saw, Devin, was we had about 9 total chargers in the state, or in our Pueblo service territory down there in Pueblo County.
Yeah, that's about right. Does that include our 3 that we just put in?
Yeah, we're really excited. That does not include the 3. We're really excited. We partnered with the city of Pueblo, and we helped them fill out an application or a grant with the Colorado Energy Office. They have a grant program called Charge Ahead. So we helped them, and they were awarded a grant for 3 additional chargers that were going to be installed downtown. I'm not exactly sure. Devin knows more about the locations, but they will be downtown. And so Black Hills, the charging grant covered 80% of the cost of the chargers, and Black Hills agreed to make up the other 20% of the funding. So these chargers are going to come to the city with no additional cost. So we're excited about those. That'll be 3 new chargers in the downtown area. Devin, I don't know if you have a quick update on when those will be installed.
So they're installed. I just was working with Scott Hobson at the planning office today, and he signed off on the rate design that Mike and I put together. So they're installed. They're not online yet, but they're ready to go.
Great.
They'll be level 2, right?
Yes, in the chat, Roz asked in the chat, those are all level 2s. And so I'll give the addresses real quick. 200, well, I guess it's 115 South Main. One at the Transportation Center under the parking garage roof, and then one in 8th and Court.
All right, so what is our electrification plan? Again, I'm not sure if my slides moved or not. I can't quite
Yep.
tell. Am I?
You're good. Ready, EV. Over.
Okay. I can't tell when I'm sharing my screen and watching. So what we're calling our electrification plan, we came up with our catchy name, and it's called Ready EV. That's how we're marketing our plan. And it's a quite comprehensive plan. So there are a lot of things we're trying to address in this plan. The new rates are one aspect of the plan. So I'm going to save that for Mike. Mike's going to talk about our rates. Other aspects of the plan is modification to our line extension policy. So for a new charging station that is planned or wants to be installed, we are making a change to our tariff that will where Black Hills will provide a construction allowance, which helps offset the initial cost of interconnecting those charging equipments. So we're making some changes on our line extension policy tariff. And rebates. We're going to be offering rebates to help incentivize customers to purchase the charging equipment. So this is both for a residential customer. So if you wanted to purchase a charging station and put it in your garage, we're going to help offset some of that cost. And then for a commercial customer, these are the public chargers. We're also providing a rebate to help offset the cost of the charging station itself. So our plan provides the kind of some incentives for the infrastructure build out. We are not addressing the cost of the vehicle itself. That's not a part of our plan. There are a lot of other incentives right now available for electric vehicles. And frankly, what we are as Black Hills as an organization, we're good at building out the infrastructure. And so that's what we're focusing on is making sure that the infrastructure is there and needed and in place to help facilitate this, hopefully expansive transportation electrification. So we're really focusing on the infrastructure side and making sure that we have all the right equipment, all the right, the substations and lines, and that we can be able to handle this load. Customer education and engagement. This one's also really critical, as we found that a lot of customers and just general people don't know a whole lot about electric vehicles. And so we're planning on partnering with our local stakeholders, which is all of you guys down there, and having stakeholder meetings, information with our dealerships to get them, engaged in the additional rebates that we're offering. We've got plans to talk with our commercial customers and their fleet, just like the Pueblo County. I know Ron and I have had some talks about that. Same with the city and same with some of our others like FedEx and UPS. As a company, we need to be ready for when FedEx comes to us and says, "Hey, we are electrifying all of our trucks," which is happening. And I saw recently Lyft made an announcement that they are encouraging all their Lyft drivers to be electric vehicle drivers. So we need to be ready for when those commercial and those fleet customers come to us with their desires. And so that is also part of our plan. The last bullet here is about the regulatory framework. So this is our very first plan. It's going to be a first of many, hopefully. And so part of our filing at the PUC is we are really trying to get the right framework in place that will allow us to make changes, modifications, adjust the plan as needed. There are a lot of other regulatory rules that we got to follow. Cost recovery is one of them. How we're ensuring the safety and the reliability of the system. There's a lot of other kind of regulatory rules that we've got to address and follow. And so that's also a major aspect of our plan. Okay, let me see if I can go to the next slide. So why did we file it? Well, as I mentioned before, electrifying the transportation sector is one of our state's top priorities. The Colorado Energy Office has put together an electric vehicle plan for the state as a whole, and they've identified a goal of 940,000 electric vehicles by 2030. And so that is the goal for the state. So it is a key initiative for our governor, and likewise, you could expect that the legislation would follow, and it has. Last year during the legislative cycle, there were 7 new legislative bills addressing electric vehicles. And one of those, recall, it was Senate Bill 1977. And this bill requires the electric utilities to file a plan with the PUC. And the purpose of the plan is to encourage the widespread adoption of electric vehicles. And so that legislation is really what drove us to make the filing. And there's a whole list of requirements in that legislation that we had to address. And the way the legislature contemplated these filings is we put together a 3-year plan, and that plan will be updated every 3 years. So we're going to put a plan together. We made the filing on May 8th. And then once that plan gets approved, we'll implement the plan, and then we'll come back to the PUC every 3 years and make updates, changes, modifications to the plan. In addition to all the legislation and public policy aspects, the adoption of electric vehicles is also a key strategic initiative for the company. Our CEO, I often say this in meetings, our CEO is very interested in electric vehicles. In fact, he was pushing us to come up with a strategy before the legislation started, seeing that the electric vehicles is going to be part of our future. And so it is a big strategic initiative for Black Hills so that we are ready for when our customers expect and demand us to be able to provide them that service. And so we're interested in it. We want to see the growth of the market grow, just like the rest of our kind of state politicians. So we're certainly aligned in a lot of the overall public policy goals on encouraging electric vehicles. A little bit about our plan. So we filed the application with the PUC on May 8th, a couple months ago. And so we are now in the beginning stages of the PUC review process, which takes a very long time. And so we're expecting a decision from the PUC in the first or second quarter next year. So around maybe April, around the April timeframe next year. And then we will implement our plan in Q3 2021. So about a year from now is essentially kind of the overall timing of when we expect our plan to kick off. Okay, so that's a quick overview of our overall plan. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Mike, talk a little bit specifically about the rate design, because we are proposing a brand new rate for EV customers. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mike. Mike is on our rate design team. So he helped us come up with the rates. And so, Mike, I'm gonna kick it off. I'm gonna hopefully.
Sounds good. You can, yeah, go right to the agenda slide. All right, so thanks, Mike, for giving that overview of the plan. Now I'm going to go into a deep dive about the rates. So I'll go into why are we proposing new rates, the importance of the time of day rate structure. So all of our rates have a time of day, or maybe you're more familiar with the time of use, also a different name for it, but very foundational for electric vehicle rates, charging rates, becoming common really all across the industry. Go into some important terms and background information, and then I'll dive into the rates, just how they were designed. We're providing 3 different rates, so probably most folks on the line here are interested in the residential rate, but we're also proposing the small general service and the large general service secondary rate. And then I'll go into how your bills would be impacted and specifically impacts to net metering customers. Go to the next slide, please. So why are we proposing the new rates? So as Mike talked about, Senate Bill 1977 requires us to file the plan, which we did, but also included in that was that to include some rate designs that encourage vehicle charging that supports the operation of the grid. Currently in Black Hills, Colorado, the whole company doesn't have any rates specifically designed for electric vehicles. We don't have any residential time of day rates. However, we do have some time of day rates for small general service and large general service secondary, but they're not really great to encourage EV charging. So in a few slides, I'll go over what an on-peak to off-peak ratio. It's pretty much how much higher that on-peak rate is than the off-peak rate. And our current time of day structure, it's very weak, so it really doesn't encourage you to shift your demand to off-peak times. And another barrier to entry for some of those large DC fast chargers is a demand charge. So having a reduced demand charge will help encourage these higher rated capacity chargers to be built. Go to the next slide. So stepping back, why are time of day or time of use rates important? So in this example, you can see in my chart, we have what the peak system load during the highest peak day for Colorado Electric in 2019. So that was on July 19th, 2019, right around now. You can see right around 4, 5, 6 o'clock, everyone's getting home, they're turning on their AC, turning on their oven. And that's really where our peak load is going to be. If a lot of people, like we're expecting, are getting electric vehicles and they're coming home and plugging in their load, all of that load is going to be shifted even higher. So time of day rates are important because they provide a price signal for customers to shift their load. You can see later on at night or early in the morning, not a lot of demand is going on. So we want to try and provide incentives for customers to shift the load to those time periods. And if they don't, then it's possible that systems could be constrained, especially at the distribution level, or we might need to build new infrastructure because we built our system based on that system peak. So we want to try and avoid that and save money for our customers.
Yeah, I'll add there that that's a really important aspect from as we start talking about electric vehicle charging. And there's a lot of concern or a lot of concern, I guess, about making sure that the electric vehicle charging uses the grid as efficiently as possible. And so, as Mike said, we don't want to have a lot of charging that happens right here at our system peak hour, because what that will cause is for us to potentially go out and either build or buy additional generation. And so what we're trying to do is flatten this load curve out so that we use our system efficiently. And electric vehicles, unlike a lot of our other uses, you have some discretion as to when you charge your vehicle. And so that's what the rate design is intended to do, is to give you that incentive, give you that encouragement to plug in your vehicle overnight or early in the morning, but do not plug in your vehicle at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these chargers have the capability just to program them, hey, start charging at 2 in the morning. So that way it's really easy. And it's, you know, the customer doesn't just have to set that program once and then they'll be able to take advantage of those time of day rates. So some important terms to understand. I went over it a little bit, but I'll go over them again. For time of day rates, what I mean is that rates that vary depending on the time of day that the energy is consumed. So for a residential rate between 3 and 7 p.m., you're going to be paying more for your electricity than any other time where you'll be paying that lower rate. And across the country, especially for EVs, this is very common. It's seen in the industry that they're foundational to the success of EVs and being able to manage that charging and shift the load. And the industry is still trying to figure out what times work. Of course, it's going to vary utility by utility and their demand curve. I've seen some utilities have 12-hour on-peak. I know PSCO, in my service territory where I'm paying, they have there's like a shoulder peak, an on-peak, and then another shoulder peak and an off-peak. So they can get very complex. We wanted to keep it very simple, easy, understandable for our customers. Just have like that one time window. The on-peak rate is going to be that higher rate that you're going to pay during that 3 to 7 time period, with the off-peak being all other hours. And then the on-peak to off-peak ratio. So this is going to be the quantitative relationship between the two rates. So a 2-to-1 ratio would indicate that the on-peak rate is twice as high as the off-peak. And getting that number just right, we want to have that price signal and have it high enough that it's encouraging you to shift your demand to off-peak times, but not also be too burdensome to the customer. We want it to be just right, and that's something that we're going to be continuously evaluating. But it seems like 2 to 3 to 4 is pretty industry common or industry standard right now.
Mike, I don't intend to interrupt you, but I hope you don't mind.
No problem.
Okay, so
No
you're talking about a ratio of the actual rates, but how about the ratio of the hours of peak and off-peak? Like, is it 12 hours off-peak, 12 hours peak?
For our proposed residential rate, it's going to be the 3 to 7. So it's just like that 4-hour period is going to be the on-peak.
There it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and there'll be another slide, but that's a good question. That's what it would be for the residential. So here's a basic overview of our rates that we're proposing. So one thing to keep in mind is they're optional to customers. It's not going to be right for every customer, so they're going to have to opt into it unless they've received one of our rebates. So we think it's fair that if you're receiving a rebate, we want to have the whole program be very successful, and with time of day rates being so foundational to the success of the managed charging and shifting the demand, I'm requiring the customers that receive a rebate to sign up. Otherwise, if you don't get the rebate, it's completely optional to all customers. So we designed the rates looking at industry best practices, so looking at other utilities throughout the country, lessons learned, a lot of other states, look at California, that have been doing this for years, but also here in Colorado with Excel and what the Public Commission is looking at. They have a working group that released several reports into what they believe is best practices. We wanted to make them as simple as possible. There's a lot of, especially out in California, you get very complex rates that are not easy to understand. They can be very overwhelming to customers. So we want them to be very simple, easy to understand, so you know exactly what you're getting into. And then we also set the rates so that if you didn't change your behavior, your charging behavior, you wouldn't see any bill impact if you changed your rate from your default residential rate. So if you shifted load off peak, you would see some bill savings, and we'll go into that in a little bit. But if you shifted more of your load to on-peak rates, then you'd probably see some bill increases. For our on-peak to off-peak ratio, it's 3 to 1 during the summer. As you saw in a few slides ago, really we're a summer peaking system. So during the summer, we want to have more of a price signal to help you shift demand, while then in the winter give you a break because there isn't as much need for you to shift demand. So a 2 to 1 for the non-summer month. And then for the on-peak hours, we're proposing 3 to 7 for the residential and 1 to 7 for the commercial, the small general service and large general service secondary customers. And these would be just Monday through Friday, not including holidays, so excluding holidays. And then we would continuously evaluate them. So as Mike mentioned, every 3 years, we're going to come in with a new plan, but also if a rate case happened in the future as well, we'd be evaluating these rates as well and updating them, updating the times, maybe the ratios, just if needed, depending on really where the data comes in and how our customers are reacting.
Yeah, and one other important aspect here is for residential customers. If a residential customer switches to this time of day rate, their entire household usage will be placed on the rate. So we are not proposing to separate out EV charging versus your air conditioner charging. So the entire household usage would be placed on the time of day rate.
Yep. Go to the next slide, please. So here are the proposed rates. So the top rate, RSEV, that's going to be the residential EV charging rate. So you can see the customer charge doesn't change. The summer on peak is going to be 3 times as high as the summer off peak. And then the non-summer peak is going to be 2 times as high as the non-summer off peak. And both off peaks we kept the same just to keep it simple, more easy to understand. And as Mike mentioned, this would be a whole house. So your entire house would be under this time of use rate or time of day rate. And that's, to make it more simple for the customer, they don't need to have another meter, which many times would be an extra meter charge. So we wanted to keep it as simple as possible. Moving on to the small general service rate. So both of our commercial rates that we're proposing are going to be only for EV charging. So if having residential be the whole house, the small general service EV rate would just be only for the charger, for most likely several L2 chargers, because it's going to be the demand for small general service has to be less than 50 kW. So most L2, which is the level 2 charger, they're normally around 5 to 10 kW, and then a DC fast charge is going to be 50 to 350, I think. So very large fast chargers. And then that on-peak hour is going to be 1 to 7. So these are probably going to be maybe your chargers that you're seeing at a gas station or a mall or a store. And then next we have the large general service. And these are going to be your DC fast chargers. So you can see the same customer charge. The biggest difference here is, as I mentioned before, demand charges, which you're paying based on like your maximum demand, are seen as a big barrier to entry for these DC fast charge systems because they have such low utilization. There's not many electric vehicles out there, so when they are being used, they're using their full demand, whether it be 50 kW or 100 kW, but they're only being charged for 20 minutes. So right now in this large general service rate, a lot of the revenues are recovered in that demand charge. And what we're proposing is to shift the cost recovery into a volumetric rate. So you can see that summer on peak and non-summer on peak rates are much higher than they are now, but because the costs are shifted to that lower demand charge. And all those charging companies, ChargePoint, Tesla, they really advocate for a higher volumetric rate than the demand charge. It allows them to be much more economical, especially in the beginning when they're trying to deploy when there's not a whole lot of electric vehicles out there. So having these rates should definitely help some development of those fast chargers, which I know if I had an electric vehicle, that's what I would want to go charge and have 20 minutes and be good to go and ready to roll. All right. So now looking at the bill impacts. So right here, I modeled 10 different scenarios, and they're the average residential customer. So this is based on what the average usage would be just for your average typical residential, small general service, or large general service customer. So I think if you key in on that RSEV line, that's where the residential customers would really fit in. So you can see in scenario 1, we have the base scenario where we calculated the rates. If you're not changing your behavior at all, you shouldn't see any change to your bill. And then I did various scenarios based on when I say high load factor, load factor, as just how frequently you're using the charger. If you're using the charger a lot, that'd be a high load factor. you're not using it very often, it's a low load factor. And then the high on-peak usage would be if you shifted more of your load, or you're charging on that on-peak between the 3 to 7, and the low peak, meaning you're able to, hopefully what many customers are going to be able to do is going to shift their load and be able to charge overnight when they're sleeping or right before work. So I would say, if I had to guess, and each customer is going to be so different because they're going to have very different charging behavior and other energy, especially with the residential rate, it's a whole house rate. Their behavior is going to vary from customer to customer. But I would imagine that most customers who want to take service, since it is an optional rate, they're going to be listening to that price signal and wanting to take advantage of the lower rates. So I think scenario 9, where you're not using your charger, so low on-peak usage, so you're shifting a lot of that load to not during the 3 to 7, and a low load factor, meaning you're not probably charging every night. You're not going to drain that battery completely every night. So I'd say if a customer is able to do that, they can see between 5 and 10% savings is definitely very realistic. So you can see on some of the others, the small general, large general service, you can really see where that demand charge plays in, where shifting between the demand and the volumetric rates can have much bigger swings than the residential rates. And that's why getting rid of the demand charge, lowering the demand charge is very beneficial to those DC fast chargers, at least in the beginning. And as those probably become utilized more, we may need to resync these, but to at least get the infrastructure there, it's really beneficial to them. Moving on to impacts to net metering customers. So this is probably the slide that everyone is really interested in. So here I have a graph, and I grabbed some data from NREL. So they have this, it's called PV watts calculator, and it allows you to get hourly data from depending where you are. So I picked Pueblo, and get what an average system output would be throughout the year. So I just graphed it, average hourly output throughout the year for Pueblo. It's a 5 kW DC system. That's what's shaded in green. And then in blue, I have what our proposed on-peak time period is. So you can see that there's definitely some generation that's going to be able to take advantage of that higher rate. So by offsetting and how the net metering works, you'd be reducing that consumption at that really high 29 cent a kWh rate. So to get just a proxy of potential savings a net meter customer could have, what I did was I took that hourly data and I generated what the annual credits would be under the current residential rate and what the proposed EV rate was. And just because of how the generation and the crediting worked out, I think the net metering customers would generate approximately $27 more a year. So that's not a ton of money, but throughout the year, you're just inherently better just based on how the timing works. One thing to keep in consideration is everyone's generation curve is going to be everyone's roof is at a different angle or a different location. So depending on, it could be advantageous. Maybe if you could shift your peak, or if you're building like a new solar on your roof, you could shift it to capture more of that on-peak period. It could be more advantageous. But for some folks that are tilted further away, it could be shifted further away. So where you're going to not get less of the benefit. So it's really going to vary immensely customer by customer on what their generation is. But I think more importantly, it's going to be how do you react to changing your consumption. If you can shift that demand, you will certainly get savings. And then just because of how the timing works, you could get a little bit more additional savings just because of how the timing works with getting that additional generation at the on-peak rate.
Mike, a quick question here. In that estimate of $27 more in credits, have you factored in the mere fact that the irradiance during 5 p.m. onwards to 7 p.m. is really lower from the solar?
Yeah. So what I did was I multiplied for each hour. I took like every 87, the whole hourly data from NREL, and I multiplied it by what credit they would get. So for example, at noon, maybe you're getting 3 kWh, multiplying that times what would be the off-peak rate. And then during, at 5 p.m., you're generating 1.5 kWh, I would multiply that times the on-peak rate. And then I summed up what the total would be, comparing that to what you currently would receive as a credit. And that's how I got the $27.
Okay, thanks.
So, and if you think about $27 based on an annual, like I think in what you're going to receive throughout the whole year, it's I think I calculate like 2 or 3% of what your overall benefit is. So it's slightly in your favor, but it's not, you're not going to get rich, certainly. But if you change your behavior, change your demand, you can certainly, that's what we're really trying to key in on, and you can definitely get some savings there. And then, all right, so I think this is my last slide. So currently, as many of you are probably aware of, if you generate excess generation each month, it rolls over as a per kWh amount. And then at the end of the year, you're going to be cashed out at our avoided cost rate, or you have the option also to roll it over. One thing we're proposing to change with this rate would be that at the end of the month, the excess generation would actually be monetized. So whatever excess generation you have at the on-peak, during the on-peak, would be multiplied by that on-peak rate. And then all the excess generation during off-peak hours would be multiplied by that off-peak rate. And then they'd be rolled up together into $1 credit. That's just because our current system in place really can't handle the two different bankings, the two different rates. So this is what would be the most feasible and easiest way to get our program up and running as quick as possible. It's something, when we proposed our residential time of day rate pilot a couple of years ago, this is a big issue. And this was kind of what we decided was, and what also a lot of the parties kind of reached an agreement on. This would make sense because all of the customers would be fairly compensated. They'd be getting the benefit of generating at that on-peak rate, or getting compensated fairly when they're excess generating during the off-peak rate. And it's also something that Excel does as well. So that's kind of like the big change.
Are you saying that? Are you saying that the bills would you would do away with the bank altogether, and you'd either give
you wouldn't,
or what?
Yeah, so you wouldn't be storing like kWh, like if you see in your bill, like maybe you wouldn't be rolling over 30 kWh, you'd be rolling 30 times the rate. So it's just like it's just converting it into $1.
Okay.
Based on if it's on peak or off peak. So there'd be like two formulas going on: your excess generation at on peak hours times that on peak rate, excess generation at off peak hours times that off peak rate. And you're just summing it together, and then that would be your credit on your bill for the next month, and that would just continue to roll over if needed.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the big change here, and this is a pretty significant change for net metered customers. The statutes and the laws say that we have to value your excess generation at a 1-for-1 of the retail value. Well, when we implement a time of day, what we're saying now is that retail value has a different meaning based on what time of day it is. And so now if you have excess generation during our peak hours, we are going to value that again at the retail value, but it's at the much higher rate. And then likewise, if you have excess generation during the off-peak hours, that will be valued at the retail value. And so our billing system is, how should I say, it's not as easy for us to be able to capture those on and off-peak excess using a kilowatt hour. Because we would have to then break out your bank into on-peak and off-peak. And so our billing system doesn't quite have that capability. And so rather than that, we will be monetizing, so applying the dollar value, not the kilowatt hour value, based on the on-peak and off-peak generation. So as Mike mentioned, Xcel Energy up here in the Denver area, they have time of day rates. They've had them a pilot program for a couple years now, I think 2 or 3 years. This is the same system or the same method that they came up with for net metered customers up here. And so it is a way to still make sure that we appropriately value and give you the credit, the retail rate credit, with also recognizing the other challenges of our billing system. So it's a good solution that I think all the parties at least have come to. Mike mentioned we proposed a time of day pilot program about 2 years ago, and the commission ultimately canceled our pilot program. But this was one of the aspects that we needed to figure out and address, and we did. And this is the same solution that we addressed with the commission, and we got stakeholders buy-in and support. So it is a significant change for net meter customers. Your bill would look differently. So we're going to have to do a lot of education and outreach to make sure that our customers kind of understand what the difference is, understand what it means, and so yeah, we're planning. That's part of our stakeholder engagement process. That once we get kind of our finalized rates and we go through this whole process, that we will be doing a lot of outreach, and especially to our solar net metered customers, to make sure that they understand exactly what these changes mean for them.
I have a question, if I may.
Yeah, I think we're done. So we're open for questions now.
All right. So I actually sent it through the chat, but let me compound it a little more. Some EV owners or future, we're still in the future EV owner stage ourselves, but I would think that net metered customers who are thinking of going EV will want to also use their EVs as a battery backup system for their household. And so the idea would be, because as you can see on slide number 15, where you show the curve of production overlapping with the peak hour production, this curve here, right here. Most net meter customers will want to charge their EVs when it is cheaper, and then in the peak times, if they are not using their EV, use a two-way charger and apply the battery from the EV to offset the high consumption of their oven or other appliances. Is that something that Black Hills is taking into account in the way that you guys are doing the rate design and everything?
I'd say it's not directly factored into our rate design, but we certainly know that with these changes to the electric vehicles, that capability is coming. Some of the electric vehicles out there now don't allow that to happen yet, but certainly it will be an option in the future. And so it's not explicitly addressed or identified in our program now, but we know that's an issue, and that's something that we're going to have to address in the future.
Thank you.
Well, that's a slick idea, Manny.
Yeah.
I love that. I think one of the questions that Ryoka raised, and I'm sure everyone is interested in, is eventually, it seems to me that time of day rate would apply to all ratepayers, all RS1 ratepayers. Is that correct?
It's potentially. Xcel Energy recently has a plan to convert all customers to a time of use rate. And so it is certainly as part of their overall long-term strategy to convert everybody to a time of use rate. We don't have that plan as we sit here today, that we're intending to convert everybody to a time of day rate. Our plan right now is specifically just for electric vehicle customers. I do think that, at least I can tell you my vision, is that we will have options available for our customers. And so you could pick from a multitude of different rates, including block rates, flat rates, time of day rates, low income rates. And so I envision that we're going to have a lot of choices and options for our customers in the future.
Great. That sounds excellent. Ron, I want to make sure, because you're sort of more of a visitor, I guess, that you get your questions answered. Do you have any other questions for the gentleman?
Thank you for that, Ross. So I have comment for Michael and suggestion or question as well. So you mentioned earlier that the number of EVs in Pueblo is very low, and that's basically because of the program of Colorado Energy Office. They only have the incentive for EVs on metropolitan Denver, and we didn't have that luxury here in Pueblo or southern part. That being said, there is a gap, I think, in the financial incentive. It does not finance the whole EV, but only the difference between the EV and the equivalent gas type cars or vehicles. So I think with that gap, since you mentioned also earlier that you don't have plans to incentivize EVs, only the EV chargers. But what I'm bringing up here is an idea that you may hopefully consider that there is a balance between the two, EV chargers and EVs. With so many EV chargers and not a lot of EVs, there's nothing to charge. So it does not really play off well without that good balance. Like, for example, when you design a transformer supposedly to supply multiple customers, you don't just put in a size customer 100 kVA without knowing the actual load of all the customers that are connected in that. So I'm just trying to relate the importance of balancing the number of EVs and the number of EV chargers. And I hope that in the near future, you'd also consider developing programs to incentivize EVs, especially so that we don't have that here in Pueblo.
Yeah, Ron, certainly. Yeah, I appreciate your comments, and I agree. The funds and the grant money that's available through the Colorado Energy Office, I would agree. It's a little disappointing that they.
Well, I'm hearing a buzzing. Is anyone hearing buzzing?
Yes, I think it's maybe Betsy that is trying to say something. I'm not sure. Is that you, Betsy?
I'm not trying to say anything.
Okay.
Okay, well, the buzzing, it sounds like someone's phone is on a desk or something. Ron, I didn't really understand what you were talking about not being incentivized here in Pueblo.
So what the Charge Ahead Colorado program here is, and you can look it up on their website, it's Charge Ahead Colorado. The RACQ, or Regional Air Quality Council, I think, is providing financial incentives on purchases of EVs based on the incremental cost, the premium between an actual EV against the equivalent engine, internal combustion engine. So it's not the whole EV cost, it's the difference between the equivalent. Okay. They provide incentive only for metropolitan Denver. But the reason they're doing that is because that's the criteria put up by the federal government, and federal government is actually funding that, but it is being administered by the state. So that's where we do not have that, as I said, luxury, because they base it on regional air quality, and apparently we have cleaner air here. So we are getting penalized because because we have cleaner air. Unlike in Denver, they have really poor quality air. So they have that kind of incentive in Denver.
Well, I'll tell you, it's very complicated, Ron, too. In Pueblo, there are many other things besides the financial aspect. It is a lower economic area, but besides that, there's a different car culture here, too. I'm just going to tell you in 2 sentences. Manny and I had and then a bunch of us from Ryoka had the opportunity to participate in an electric vehicle show right next to a classic car show. We thought, great, the classic car people will be over for the Teslas. We had 15 Teslas. We did this with San Isabel Electric Association. We had smart cars, electric cars, so cool, right? We had to practically beg those classic car people to get into a Tesla. You think we were asking them if they want the plague? They were so, they're into their muscle cars here. They really, we're going to have to do a lot of educating. I mean, we do have an educated population, but it's not even just economics. There's a lot of people with money that like the classic cars and wouldn't have an EV, you know?
Yes, I understand that, Ross, and it's part of the birth pains of EVs. But let me tell you that GMC is actually gearing up to produce Hammer. The next Hammer would be EV, and then it would be very powerful to pull trailer, and that would be an answer. It just so happened that the EV started from small cars, and that's why it's not really appreciated.
Right, I hear you.
But there will be a time that we will go to that muscle EV cars too.
Okay. Promise?
Yeah, and Ron, I just answer your question a little bit. Certainly we recognize and we're disappointed that the Energy Office and their vehicle grants are more targeted toward the Denver metro area. That's certainly the case. But from our perspective, like I mentioned, what we're good at and what our core competency is at Black Hills is building the infrastructure and providing safe, reliable service. And so that's what we're good at. That's what we would focus our attention on. And you also have to remember that the cost of this program, so these rebates, the infrastructure, that's borne by all of our customers. And so, you know, as we sit right now, incentivizing a vehicle is just not something that I think I could ask my customers to pay for.
Oh, I see. Okay. I have a different impression. I thought the incentives are coming from like a fund from carbon tax or a cap and trade program that maybe the state has. I didn't know about that. So in California, there are different models there. So I didn't know you pass it on here to the customers. So okay, my hands are up on that.
Well, there was a point though, Michael and Mike, with San Isabel that they teamed up with Nissan, and Nissan gave their customers, it was substantial. I'm going to say like 3,000. It was a nice chunk of change for a car, to buy the car. And then San Isabel chipped in, like you guys, 500 for the level 1 charging station, you know, level 1, you know, but so maybe something could be worked out with the dealers down here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had some good conversations with some of our dealers in other parts up in Wyoming and up in Rapid City, and have had good feedback and good support from the dealers. And so, yeah, certainly our plan is to engage those dealers and get them involved as well.
Great. Well, that's great.
If you don't mind me asking one more question.
Sure.
So, Michael, you mentioned about supporting the grants on the 20% match fund that BHE would support that 20%, right? Mm-hmm. So is this support intended only for residential and commercial? How about like the Pueblo County government? Are we also eligible for that kind of support?
Absolutely, yeah.
Does that include the fast chargers? Because recently, Outfuels Colorado launched its fast chargers from 150 kilowatt and up. So that's beyond the range that Chargerhead Colorado is supporting. Is that included in the support of Black Hills?
Yeah, it is, and I didn't include it on my slides, but for a DC fast charger, we will offer a $35,000 rebate. The infrastructure, the reason why is it's so much more. The infrastructure for one of those massive fast chargers is quite a lot. We have to build significant infrastructure to be able to supply that type of load. But So we would offer a $35,000 rebate to help offset some of those costs.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So it's what time is it here? It's a little after 7. Ken, how do you feel? It seems to me I feel pretty good about our questions being answered. I think time of day is really the wave of the future anyway. I mean, it's not like this is a surprise. I'm actually more surprised that it's not going to be for all ratepayers sooner than later. So
yeah, so I'm happy. I think some of these questions got answered in part, or maybe.
Of course.
Let me see. Let me ask Steve. He joined us late. Steve, do you have any questions or comments to add?
My only question was for clarification, and my apologies for being late. I want to be sure that I heard, I think it was Michael correctly when he said that we would be compensated, we as in solar owners, and I'm an EV owner and I have a level 2 charger in my house and a solar on the roof and so on, that we would be compensated at the full retail rate during the for both the off-peak and the on-peak. It wouldn't be the wholesale. Right now, we are compensated at the essentially the wholesale rate.
Yeah, it'd be a full retail.
But Steve, it's retail depending on the time. If it's off peak, it's that retail. It's like 9. Okay.
Sure, I understand that, but
sure.
if there was any, and I want to also be clear. I think I heard Mike say that the funds would carry over. So just the way we bank kilowatt hours, now we bank dollars, correct? So
yeah, it would be rolled over as a dollar credit to the next bill and so on. Yep.
Okay. All right. Because even as a solar producer, I'm going to, in December and January and February, I'm going to be paying a bill now that I currently am not, because I'm banking kilowatt hours.
Mm-hmm.
And will that roll over as well? Will the dollars roll over at the end of the year, just like the banked hours do now, or the banked kilowatt hours do now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it seems reasonable to me. I mean, time will tell, and I don't have an EV, so I probably won't have much to say about it. But we want to help you educate people for sure, because I want to see more EVs being sold down here.
I think Ryoka could help in the education, right? Because we have
totally.
We have a network of folks, right?
Totally, that's where we can help. And I don't know if you saw my note, but we already did a wonderful presentation. Black Hills, I think Black Hills was part of it as well, and San Isabel, and the Colorado State Energy Office, the state energy specialist, Carrie Weiner. He has a terrific presentation about EVs, and I know we could do that again. We did that last year, and
he's from Colorado State University Extension, honey.
Extension, right,
yes.
right. So that would actually be. This worked out really well. We might even be able to do a Zoom thing,
I had one. I'm not sure if we asked it in our question sheet, but so Michael, you or Mike implied that we could actually save money if we went on time of day, right? If we had the right behavior. In other words, if we just kept if we kept doing things the same way, it should be a zero net effect on our bill, right? But if we were better behaved and we got off peak, usage down, our bills would go down. I mean,
yeah. Based on my modeling, it would be like 5 to 10%, probably closer to 5 if you were able to shift it. But there's definitely a lot of savings. Opportunities out there if you are able to shift that load. Of course, if you shift it to on peak, the opposite happens.
Right.
Can you share?
Hopefully you don't do that. The question is this: can anybody go on this time of day plan, or is it just new EV owners?
Only if you have an EV. So if you already have an EV, you can go on it, or if you get one, but it wouldn't be open to all customers right now. You just have to have an EV.
Mike, can you share specifically the slide? I think it's slide number 14.
Figure out how to stop it.
Mike Harrington's gonna click that one.
Yes, this is your estimated savings, correct?
So I ran multiple scenarios. Like, what if you switch a lot of load to on peak, or what if you switch a lot of load to off peak? So I just wanted to get the whole range of different customers' behaviors, just to see the range of possibilities. But in my opinion, number 9 would be most likely, where you're actually going to be reacting to that price signal, shifting some of that load, so that way you're being able to save some money. So that like that 5% on scenario 9. But you can see I went where you could be paying 10% more if you shifted a lot of your load to on peak for whatever reason.
I have a question.
Yes, thank you.
Manny, Steve has a question.
Okay, make sure your question got answered. Sorry.
Manny, you okay?
Yes, I just emailed privately or chatted privately with Mike to send us a PDF of this slide so that we can educate the Ryoka people about these scenarios.
Okay.
We'll probably do the whole presentation, I would think.
Yeah, my one disclaimer here is these are the rates that we proposed, and I can tell you with 100% certainty that what we propose will not be what is finally approved by the PUC. So I don't know exactly what everything is going to change yet, but this is at least the starting place for what we think is a good rate design for our customers. But we got to go through the whole process with the stakeholders and the commission, and so there might be some changes to these rates. So certainly we're happy to share information, but just understand that it could change between now and when we implement it.
Yeah, just make sure you put that disclaimer in your presentation. Okay, right up.
That's right.
But it's reasonable. I mean, I've read rates of other utilities, including Fort Collins, and I'll tell you, Fort Collins, when you get into at certain times of the year, it's 2 to 7, 3 to 7. It's so complicated, really. This is very simple. You really keep it simple, man. Really.
That was our goal.
Yeah,
glad to hear it.
Very smart. No, ready, EV. I'm ready. I'm ready for an EV. Okay. So what do you think, guys? So should we adjourn? How's everybody feeling right now?
Yeah, I think this is good.
I had a question.
I really appreciate the Black Hills folks coming.
Me too. Very, very happy. Steve, go ahead, Steve.
No problem.
Okay. Maybe it was explained earlier, but I don't understand why the peak is different for residential and commercial. For residential, I understand the impact of load, but if you're generating solar, it's a systems thing. It's not just offsetting load for residential customers, it's offsetting load for residential, commercial, and industrial. So why is it a 1 to 7 compensation or charge for commercial and industrial and 3 to 7 for residential? I'm helping whichever customer is turning on a gizmo, the 1 and 3 time frame as well.
Yeah, so for one reason, the residential, we wanted the window as short as possible, so it's not as much of a burdensome to customers. So the residential rate is being a whole house rate, so that means all of your usage would be included in this on-peak rate, while for the small general, large general, it would be only EV charging. So we think that they're a lot more flexible potentially to shift their load as opposed to a residential customer. And additionally, the load profiles, of residential and the commercial customers are a little bit different, where the peak is much more pronounced later in the afternoon for residential customers, and that's why we wanted to key in on that, when it's a little bit more flat for those small general and large general customers as a whole. So and additionally, current time of day rates for ours, we already have a couple rates for the small general, large general, they're already 1 to 7. So for a consistency standpoint, we wanted to keep it simple for that as well.
Good question, Steve. I didn't even notice that. That was great.
But yep, there are differences. Good question.
Yeah.
Steve always comes with the hard questions.
He does, I know. That's why he's on the team.
So to me, the idea of the time of use rate is to try to reduce system load such that you don't have to build more new generation. Shifting load is a lot cheaper than building new generation, especially when generation is only a peaker or is only used for a time. So I'm still trying to wrap my head a little bit around that differential. I understand wanting to not inconvenience people. That's on the narrowing the shift of usage sort of path. You're trying to narrow the shift of usage. But when it comes to the system impacts on the generation side of a solar customer, it's a little bit different argument. We're helping that 1 to 7 every bit as much, or the 1 to 3, the missing window, and the missing kind of uncompensated window. So I'm still having a little hard time with that.
And honestly, like,
and on the other hand, I know Truman said just give me a one-handed economist, but there are two sides to that story, and the solar's producer, I think, is coming up a little short in that deal. And it's a customer, but I think the solar producer, the solar generator, may lose a little bit in the deal.
Yeah, it certainly would be more advantageous to have that longer window, and it's something that we're going to definitely need to evaluate. It's having the time is just based on what our data and what our load analytics are showing. So something I'm sure whatever time does come out will probably be different anyways, based on what happens with this whole the proceeding, because there's going to be advocates for all sorts of different windows. But it's definitely an interesting point, and a possibility that in the future, even depending on what times we do decide that we would shift depending on how that incremental EV load shifts. What if everyone's charging at 8 p.m. now? Maybe we need to shift it over to that window instead. It's something that we're going to have to really learn about.
When you do give your rebate, so a residential customer says, I want an EV charger put in, do you limit? I mean, is it a specific charger that they put in, or can they have any choice they want?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ken. So we went through a vetting process, if you will, on all, or at least the major EV manufacturers. And so for the last year, we've been conducting interviews with them. ChargePoint is one, Tesla is one, Enel X is another. So we went through and vetted all of the manufacturers. We tested their equipment and we looked at it. And so we picked 2 companies that we thought produce a quality product. And so that's ChargePoint and Enel X. And so, at least in our initial plan, those are the companies that we would rebate the equipment on. We're not saying that any future company can participate. Certainly they can. But we have kind of a criteria that we will follow when evaluating the equipment. Because if you think about it, again, all of our customers are going to be paying for this equipment. And it's kind of, we feel like some of our responsibility to make sure that the equipment that's being installed is a good quality equipment. It's not going to break down. It's, our customers are going to have a good experience with it. And so, we have kind of a scoring vetting process that we went through to kind of vet these out. And so ChargePoint and Enel X, they've got multiple models that are available, and all of their models are really good quality, good models. And so those are the companies right now that we would offer the rebates for.
Now, will we would we come to Black Hills and ask for the installation, or would we just do it and then ask for the rebate? You understand my question? Black Hills, will Black Hills manage the install?
It kind of depends. For a residential customer, no. That work would be done by either an electrician, depending on what type of setup you have in your garage. A level 2 charger usually requires the 220 volt, the bigger kind of plug. So you might have to have some electrical work in your house there. The idea is that rebate, the $500 rebate, would help offset some of that cost. For commercial chargers, so if you think of like a charging station out there, our crews would be involved in interconnecting and getting the system energized. And so we would be involved in that aspect of the installation process.
And Mike, is it usually a level 1 that someone puts in their home, or is it a level 2?
Well, a level 1 is just the extension cord.
Oh, that's it? Okay.
Yeah, that's the extension cord that you just plug into a regular outlet.
Oh, okay.
I
think that's one you get for free.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
The level 2 is the one that requires a little bit bigger plug, and it charges your car a little faster.
I thought those were only about 500 though.
They range between $500 up to $1,000, $1,500.
Okay, yeah, because that rebate that San Isabel gave seemed to cover at least some charging, some of the charging stations. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so any other questions, guys?
Is there any effect to folks that currently have a Black Hills rebate with this for solar? Would there be any effects there?
Well, I guess, what do you
I'm not
mean by the rebate? Are you talking about the incentive, the performance incentive?
Yeah, the generation rebate for the solar, for like a medium size residential solar system.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, no changes to that, so it has no impact on that.
Okay,
great.
That was an important question. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Alex. See, they always come in at the very end. I find it's really interesting. Everybody else feel satisfied?
Eldon, do you have anything, any comments or questions?
Well, I want to thank both of you, Mike and Michael, and Devin, for bringing Mike and Michael. And it was really very valuable. You can read this stuff, but it's really nice. It was a nice presentation, and I feel comfortable with it, and I can explain it, and we'll help as much as we can.
Great.
Yeah, great. Well, yeah, we're happy to be here, and certainly appreciate Devin for reaching out too. We're certainly always interested in making sure everyone clear understands what we're doing, and that we get your feedback as well. That's important to us. So we're happy to give any presentations, follow-up questions. Certainly, we're happy to do that as well.
Great. Well, that's excellent. Okay. Well, as far as I'm concerned, then the meeting is adjourned.